Stoic thinkers who were killed for the lives they lived and the ideas they taught. Those who followed this philosophy often lived unremarkable lives on the surface. They held public offices, walked familiar streets, spoke with friends, and attended civic duties. Yet beneath this ordinariness was a commitment that proved deeply unsettling to those in power: the belief that no external authority could command the conscience. 1. Socrates, 469 to 399 BCE. Socrates spent most of his life in Athens, moving slowly through its marketplaces and public spaces. He was born into a modest household, the son of a stonemason and a midwife, and he never attempted to rise above these origins. He owned little, dressed simply, and lived without the trappings of influence. Among his peers, he was known as approachable, persistent, and oddly patient. He lived as many Athenians did, married, raising children, serving as a soldier when called upon. Yet there was something quietly unsettling about him. He asked questions that did not seek victory but clarity. He spoke about virtue as something internal and self-governed, rather than dependent on reputation or success. He believed that a good life was measured by moral integrity, not approval. Though Stoicism would emerge later, Socrates embodied its core convictions. He believed that wrongdoing harmed the soul more than punishment ever could, and that fear of death was irrational when compared to fear of moral failure. In a city struggling with political instability and wounded pride, this way of thinking felt subversive. When he was condemned, Socrates did not flee. He reasoned calmly, comforted his friends, and accepted death without resentment. His execution was not loud or violent, but it left a lasting imprint. For later Stoics, his death became a foundation, proof that philosophy could be lived fully, even to the very end. 2. Cato the Younger, 95 to 46 BC. Cato was born into Roman nobility, surrounded from childhood by politics, ambition, and power. Yet he developed early a reputation for severity. He avoided excess, dressed plainly, and held himself to strict moral standards. As he matured, Stoicism became not merely a philosophical interest, but a governing principle. Among his peers, Cato was respected for his integrity and resented for his inflexibility. He refused bribes, resisted corruption, and opposed the erosion of republican values. Where others adapted to shifting political realities, Cato remained fixed. He believed that virtue was not situational and that compromise, when it violated conscience, was a form of surrender. His opposition to Julius Caesar was rooted not in rivalry, but in principle. He saw the rise of absolute power as incompatible with moral freedom. When Caesar prevailed and offered mercy, Cato refused it. To live under a system he believed unjust would have contradicted everything Stoicism taught him. Alone and deliberate, Cato took his own life. For Stoics, his death was not despair, but resolve, the final assertion that freedom of the soul could not be conquered by force. 3. Seneca the Younger, for BCE, 65 CE. Seneca's life unfolded close to the heart of Roman power. Born in Spain and raised in Rome, he was educated thoroughly in rhetoric and philosophy. From a young age, illness shaped his outlook, encouraging reflection on mortality and endurance. He rose to prominence as a statesman and became tutor and advisor to Nero. Among his contemporaries, Seneca was admired for his eloquence and questioned for his proximity to authority. His writings, however, reveal a man deeply aware of human weakness. He wrote not as a detached moralist, but as someone struggling to live up to his own ideals. His Stoicism was practical, focused on anger, fear, wealth, and the cultivation of inner stability. As Nero's rule grew increasingly violent and erratic, Seneca's moral authority became dangerous. His teachings emphasized restraint, mercy, and self-control, values that stood in quiet opposition to tyranny. Accused of conspiracy, he was ordered to die. Seneca met his end calmly, speaking with friends, embodying the composure he had long advocated. His death transformed his philosophy from words into lived example. For Thrasea Paetus, d. 66 CE. Thrasea Paetus lived quietly despite his status as a Roman senator. He avoided public spectacle and spoke only when conscience demanded it. His Stoicism shaped his approach to politics, not as a path to power, but as a test of integrity. Among his peers, Thrasea was known for restraint and seriousness. He refused to participate in ceremonies that glorified tyranny and declined to legitimize unjust authority through silence or compliance. His resistance was subtle but persistent. Under Nero, such independence was intolerable. Thrasea was accused of treason and sentenced to death. Like other Stoics before him, he accepted his fate without protest, believing that a life guided by reason does not lose its worth when taken by force. 5. Helvidius Priscus, d. 75 CE. Helvidius Priscus inherited Stoic principles both philosophically and personally. His father-in-law was Thrasea Paetus. He lived during a period when emperors demanded loyalty not just in action, but in thought. Helvidius believed that honesty in public life was a moral obligation. He spoke openly in the Senate, refused flattery, and treated emperors as fallible men rather than divine authorities. Among colleagues, he was respected for his courage and feared for his bluntness. Repeatedly exiled and recalled, Helvidius refused to soften his principles. Eventually, he was executed. His death underscored a recurring truth of Stoic history. Quiet integrity often provokes greater fear than open rebellion. These Stoic thinkers were not united by a desire for martyrdom, but by a shared ideology. They lived ordinary lives shaped by discipline, reflection, and moral clarity. Their deaths were not dramatic gestures, but consequences of refusing to surrender inner freedom. History shows us that Stoicism becomes threatening not when it is spoken, but when it is lived steadily, quietly, and without compromise.